Araw ng Pasig po sa ating lahat. I am privileged to be your host for this prestigious event in this state-of-the-art venue. By the way, my name is King Albert Nerbesa, your Masters of Ceremony. To give us her welcome remarks, let us all listen to the woman whose dream for our school's division is beyond measure. Friends, a big round of applause to our school's division superintendent, Madam Maria Evalu Concepcion Agustin.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, to our Honorable Congressman Roman Romulo, to our City Mayor, Honorable Ma Victor Regis Soto, to our Vice Mayor, Honorable Robert Jaworski, and to all the newly installed members of the City Council. We have Honorable Roderick Mario U. Gonzalez, Honorable Marion Rosalio Marquez, palakpakan niyo naman po, Honorable Noel L. Agustin, Honorable Maria Luisa M. De Leon, Honorable King A. Cruz, Honorable Mark Hill M. de los Santos, Honorable Simon Gerard Tantoco, Honorable Paul Roman Santiago, Honorable Raymond Francis Rustia, Honorable Regino Valderrama, and Honorable Cybel Asilo. We also recognize our City Admin, Attorney Jerome Manzanero, and to the eminent personalities that we have in our midst this morning, Dr. Nestor Castro, Mr. Rick Reyes, and of course, our City Councilor in charge of the Education Committee, Honorable Councilor Cory Raimundo. She's also one of the eminent personalities, kaya po hinuli ko po siya. We also welcome the members of the expanded local school board who are with us this morning, the education unit, and the top management of the SDO Pasig, Ma'am Kay Rivera, Sir Victor Habenia, and Sir Manny Laguerta. We also have with us our DepEd principals. Nasaan po ang ating mga principals? Selected lang po sila. Our barangay chairman. And of course po, the family of the honorees this morning. Welcome po kayo lahat. So, on behalf of DepEd SDO Pasig and as co-chair of the local school board, I especially and warmly welcome everyone on this blessed day, July 2nd, historically known as the Pasig City Day. So today, we continue to write on the pages of the history of Pasig as we implement the guidelines on the designation of names of newly constructed school buildings. So this is a cooperative endeavor among Pasig LGU and DepEd and prominent citizens of Pasig City. We thank everyone for everyone's presence, and we hope for a fruitful endeavor starting today and the ensuing days as planned. I wish you good luck in this endeavor. Once again, good morning and welcome to everyone.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Maria Evalu Concepcion Agustin. At this juncture, may I call on Mr. Kiko Santos, Kabataan Tambuli ng Pasig, member of local school board, to share to us the background of this ceremony.
Mayor Vito Soto, Congressman Roman Rolo, Vice Mayor Dodo Jaworski, and members of the 11th Sangguniang Panglungsod, Dr. Maria Evalu Concepcion Agustin, our school division superintendent, members of the expanded local school board, distinguished guests, and members of the family of the honorees, a pleasant morning to all of you. As mentioned by Dr. Agustin, we are gathered here today to witness the ceremonial turnover and implementation of the guidelines of naming of the some newly constructed buildings in our public elementary and secondary schools, which are named after distinguished Pasigueños that leave the mark in their communities and to our city's rich history and heritage. Naalala ko po noong July 1, 2021, a year and a day ago, meeting po ng expanded local school board at pinresenta po ang listahan ng 15 gusali, bagong gusali sa ating mga paaralan. May mga gusali po dito na natapos na bago pa man magsimula ang pandemya at may iba naman po na natapos habang kasagsagan ng pandemya. Nung ito po ay pinresenta sa local school board, ang una pong katanungan, ano po ang ipapangalan natin sa 15 gusaling ito? Wala pa man pong maibigay ng mga pangalan ng meeting na yon, meron pong napagkasunduan. Ang mga gusali na ito ay ipapangalan sa mga tanyag at kilalang Pasigueño na nagkaroon ng ambag sa edukasyon, buhay komunidad o kasaysayan ng ating lungsod. Kung kaya't bumuo po ng technical working group ang local school board para maglatag ng mga pamantayan na kailangan sundin sa pagpapamangalan ng mga bagong gusali. Hindi lamang po ito para doon sa 15 gusali, bagkus pati na rin po sa mga susunod pang gusali na maitatagdag po ng ating lungsod. Kasama po sa technical working group ay ang Kabataan Tambuli ng Pasig, si Ma'am Evalu po from our DepEd SDO, and si Sir Reynan Martin ng Parent Teacher Association. And after several months, we were able to create the guidelines that shall be followed from henceforth. And so far, we have named 5 buildings in honor of these distinguished Pasigueños. Allow me to name a few. Luciano P.R. Santiago Building sa Dr. Sixto Antonio Elementary School, Gregorio Coching Building sa Buting Elementary School, Emiliano Caruncio Jr. Building sa Repsi, Jovito Salonga Building in this very historical school, Rizal High School, at ang Filomeno de Leon Building sa Pineda Elementary School. These key figures have one way or the other contributed to our city. But one thing's for sure, the youth of today can look up to these individuals, relate to their life as fellow Pasigueños, and know that just like them, they can blaze a trail and leave a mark in our city. Tunay na tunay, tuloy na tuloy ang pag-agos sa pag-asa sa lungsod ng Pasig. Maraming salamat po at maligayang araw po ng Pasig sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kiko Santos, for the wonderful background that you shared to us. Again, please give him a big round of applause. We now come to the heart of this program, the tribute to the honorees. First, may I call on Dr. Nestor Castro, one of the eminent person group, a professor from UP Diliman Department of Anthropology, to give an honor to Luciano P.R. Santiago Building in Dr. Sixto Antonio Elementary School and Gregorio Coching Building in Buting Elementary School. Please give him a big round of applause.
Isang maligayang araw ng Pasig sa ating lahat. Gusto kong ipakilala ang unang honoree ng ating mga building, si Dr. Luciano Chito P.R. Santiago. Dr. Luciano Santiago is a native of Barangay Bagong Katupunan. He was a psychiatrist by profession, whose sphere of influence extended to the culture and the arts. thanks to his prolific accounts of significant personalities from Pasig and beyond. Born on June 21, 1942, Dr. Santiago spent his formative years as a grade school student in Pasig Catholic College before moving to San Beda College for high school. He obtained his medical degree from the College of Medicine of the University of the Philippines and went on to practice adult and child psychiatry in the Philippines and abroad. His time at the Shepherd and Enoch Pratt Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, gave him the opportunity to contribute substantially to the wealth of knowledge in the field of psychiatric medicine. His scholarly work earned him the Wendell Munsey Prize Award for Distinguished Writing in Psychiatry in 1970 and as well as in 1976. To this day, Dr. Santiago remains to be the only non-American recipient and also the only awardee to ever win twice. When he decided to return to the Philippines, Dr. Santiago continued to practice in the medical city while also furthering his career as a writer and historian. Dr. Santiago's writings covered a wide range of interests, from art to genealogy, and his work, particularly on 19th century Philippines, received much acclaim and prestigious awards. His book, The Hidden Light, The First Filipino Priests, was first released in 1987 and featured the first published historical account on the early Pasigueño priests of the 18th and 19th centuries. Dr. Santiago's valuable research shed light on the life of Padre Jacinto Gutierrez Bautista, who is now recognized as the first Pasigueño priest born in Bambang in 1743. The multi-awarded book also featured the secular priests who were natives of Pasig and more commonly known as Bachiller Don. Dr. Santiago received recognition from the Archdiocese of Manila for his book, becoming a finalist in the Best Book category of the Catholic Press Awards. In 1990, Dr. Santiago also penned the biography of the famed Filipino artist Damian Domingo in collaboration with the writer Nick Joaquin. Dr. Santiago's extensive research for the world of Damian Domingo, 19th century Manila, dug deep into the life of Domingo and unearthed stories behind his vivid portraits and religious tableau. For their outstanding work in preserving the memory of Damian Domingo and his pieces, Dr. Santiago received the National Book Award for Art and History from the Manila Critics Circle in 1990. As Dr. Santiago continued to engage in archival research throughout his career, he was the recipient of multiple international awards. Among them are the Premio Manuel Bernabe in History from the Spanish Embassy and the Research Grant Award from the Toyota International Foundation, which helped him gain access to extensive archives in Spain and the Vatican. Dr. Santiago passed away on February 1, 2019, leaving behind a rich collection of books, monographs, articles that will live on to memorialize the past that he spent many years tirelessly preserving. So let us honor Dr. Chito Santiago. Let me continue with the life of the artist Gregorio Coching. In the early 20th century, Pitong Matatanda sa Nayon was formed by a group of 7 gentlemen from Pasig who wanted a regular avenue to discuss current events and preserve the memories of Pasig as they have come to know it. Whenever the pioneer members would come together, they would busy themselves with collecting old artifacts and exchanging ideas on significant events in the city's rich history. This group was eventually more formally organized to become the Historical Research Club of Pasig, and the longtime Buting resident Gregorio Cabral Coching was one of the 7 founding members. Born in 1892 to parents Juan Coching and Cesaria Cabral, Coching became a student in the arts at a very young age. He found himself employed at the shop run by the locally renowned engraver Crispulo Zamora, who was famously commissioned to create the medals, trophies, and crowns for the Manila carnivals. Zamora was also the go-to maker of metal buttons and insignias for the military, which put Coching to a perfect position to learn the craft from a true master. He eventually became the chief engraver at Zamora's shop and helped to hone the skills of the more junior staff who all worked hard to keep the art and tradition of engraving alive. Coching was later commissioned to engrave insignias for the Legionarias del Trabajo, a fraternal organization for Filipino Americans that still exists today, and traveled to China, Japan, and South America to represent the organization. In 1917, Coching also managed to win the Engraver of the Year award at a national competition. As it turned out, a promising career in engraving wasn't enough for Coching, and he went on to try his luck as a writer and illustrator in the early 1920s. His success first began at the iconic magazine Liwayway, launched a Tagalog novel writing contest wherein in 1925, Coching's entry, Sanggumay, won first place. Coching and his works quickly became the talk of the town, elevating the likes of his works, Nanay Ko, Anak Ko, and Gagamba, to cult favorites that still ring a bell to some today, especially those from the older generation. Doña Jeronima, another one of his illustrated comics, was another popular Coching original, which was most notably set in Pasig, and followed the story of a sculptress and a mermaid queen against the backdrop of the Pasig River. Coching also tried his hand at illustrating and had begun doing the graphics for Ang Kidlat ng Silangan before pursuing a full comic series titled Harasiri. Coching also briefly tested the waters with sculpting and produced several pieces, most notably one of a Filipino maiden bound by chains with an eagle and a dragon wrestling behind her, which reportedly represents the Philippines at the mercy of its warring American and Japanese colonizers. During his time as a member of the Pitong Matanda sa Nayon, Coching toyed with the idea of erecting a 120-feet bust of Jose Rizal, which would be hollow inside and would house an observatory and multiple galleries. The proposed Rizal Provincial Library, Museum, and School of Fine Arts was reportedly ready for implementation, but plans were halted due to insufficient funds. Coaching passed away in 1961, but he leaves behind a life's worth of art and a roster of skills and talents that will be remembered. His son, national artist Francisco Coaching, managed to keep the family name alive in the realm of Philippine comics during his prime and churned out more Coaching classics such as Pedro Penduko and El Negro. So, let us pay our respects to Gregorio Coaching.
A big round of applause to Dr. Nestor Castro. Thank you, sir. Thank you. At this very moment, may I call on Honorable Councilor Dr. Corazon Raimundo, the eminent person, or one of the eminent person group member, local school board, to give an honor to Emiliano Caruncho Building in Rizal Experimental Station and Pilot School of Cottage Industries, and honor to Senator Jovito Salonga Building located at Rizal High School. Friends and colleagues, please give her a big round of applause.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong Albert. Isang magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Lalo-lalo na tunay na mas magandang umaga at araw dahil itong araw na ito ay napaka-memorable sa ating lahat bilang mga Pasigeno. Happy 449 year of Pasig, araw ng Pasig. Good morning. It is such a distinct pleasure and honor for me to be able to introduce to you in very short but meaningful manner two of our great Pasigueños whose lives are not too far away from our memory. But what we would like to do is to etch their memories in our minds, particularly among our children within educational institutions, because as Filipinos and as Pasigueños, we want our Pasigueños with great contributions to our development in any field be remembered and be etched in history, and it's possible. We start working on giving their life stories in history books and books in our schools. So I guess that is a challenge to our DepEd as well as to our PLP. We name buildings after people to commemorate their lives or their generosity or their important contributions and have their memories live so that people will remember them long after they're gone. This is not just for posterity, but rather for their good works to remain in our minds and in our hearts, and we emulate them, particularly our young children. And in the lives, especially of our young people, in the field of learning, and they are effective structures to remember great men and great people by. Today, as we celebrate our 449th year of established great Pasigueños, one is our former Mayor Emiliano Nanin Caruncho Jr., whose name will be remembered in one of the buildings of the REPSI, or the Rizal Experimental Station and Pilot School of Cottage Industries in Barangay Maybunga. Pasig Mayor Emiliano Nanin Caruncho Jr. is a public servant who up to this day is the longest serving mayor of Pasig City that is for 3 decades from 1956 to 1986. His 3 decades of public service is best remembered as a period of transformation and development. Pasig City then, if anyone of you were alive at that time, is really a very rural area, like a grassland in a part of Rizal province. But the town started to become an urban place with characteristic buildings, parks and playgrounds, cemented roads, drainage systems, and modernizing public works. And this is all started during the time of Naning Carucho, our former mayor. As early as the 70s, perhaps if we may ask, what would be the famous or still famous buildings that had been erected during the reign of Emiliano Carucho Jr.? The Mucha ng Pasig Market, now known as the Pasig Mega Market, still stands to this day, except that there had been some repairs. Likewise, the Mucha ng Pasig Revolving Tower, still known as the Revolving Tower, are engineering feats during those times of its administration, and still are centers of trade and business to this day. I think that would be the most significant contribution of former Mayor Emiliano Naning Carucho to the lives of Pasigueños up to this day. He has been long gone, but still remembered, and should long be remembered by our children through the school system and hopefully by writings, books that will be used in the elementary and high schools of Pasig City. My friends, let's take tribute to the works and contributions of former Mayor Emiliano Naning Carucho Jr. May I then take the honor in announcing our former Senate President, Bobito Salonga. Perhaps, if I may make my own assessment, I will consider Senator Bobito Salonga as one of the most illustrious Pasigueños, and who died only a few years ago. He has been named as the true son of Pasig and one of the country's most celebrated statesmen. It is quite sad today that many of our politicians, particularly the national, like the senators, could not be considered statesmen. Only a few of them still remain to be so. But Bobito Salonga is one who has gained that kind of title up to this time. Bobito Salonga is a product of public schools from his elementary grades in San Miguel, Barangay San Miguel, high school, here at Rizal High, his law degree from the University of the Philippines in Man, and later on, in his studies, he moved on to the United States and took up his law degree from Harvard University, and also his Doctor of Laws from Yale University, both from the United States. His academic achievement also included being a top-notcher of the bar exam with the highest grade of 95.53% for a long time. That has not been topped. He topped that board exam at that time together with attorney Jose Jokno. He serves as Philippine Senator for a total of 12 years, and as Senator served as Senate President of the Senate for 4 years of those 12 years. He carved out his legacy in the country's political landscape and was known as the Great Fiscalizer. And he served as a moral voice in some defining moments in Philippine legislation. He was also a congressman, and as a representative in the House, he served as committee chairperson of good governance and was well known not to back down from controversial issues, especially when it concerns protection of our sovereignty. One of the examples of the fights that he had to protect Philippine sovereignty is the issue of Sabah. At the Senate, he remained steadfast in the quest for truth and justice, bringing attention to the anomalies of the Marcos regime. He was a staunch defender of the political prisoners during the martial law. After martial law, he ran again for a seat in the Senate, and once again, he topped the race. He was number 1, and during which he was known for landmark legislations like the Anti-Plunder Act, or the RA 708P, and the Anti-Coup d'etat Act, or the RA 6968. And during the time of President Cory Aquino, he was appointed as chairperson of good governance during that administration. So if we look at the record of our own Senator Salonga in the Senate or as a legislator, we can see that he has this knack for fighting for the right and for justice. And he picks up difficult issues that he would carry to the end. Even after his public service, he continued his efforts towards raising political consciousness of people. And he championed the cause of the civil society works, and he continued teaching as a law professor. So, my dear friends, ako po walang pasabi pag pinag-uusapan na po si Senator Salonga. Kasi talagang kahanga-hanga siya. Hindi natin siya dapat makalimutan. Hindi dapat siya makalimutan ng ating mga kabataan. Lalong-lalo na ang ating mga kabataan na hanggang ngayon ay dapat lumalaban para po sa kalayaan ng ating bayan. Maraming uri ng kalayaan. And Salonga stood tall, or should still stand tall in those fights for freedom, independence, and our right as individuals. Pero medyo matanda na po ako kaya siguro po sa mga paaralan, diyan po natin talagang siksik sa isip ng ating mga bata. Ang isang katulad ni Senator Salonga, hindi naman po malayo kasi Pasigueño din siya. Ang roots niya ay nandito. Dito siya nag-aral hanggang sa Rizal High School. At dito po siya talaga natapos sa Pilipinas ng kanyang law degree at nagpatuloy sa mahusay or pinakamahusay na paaralan sa buong mundo. So, my dear friends, please help me, help every one of us, help the local school board, pay tribute, and even respect and even revere somebody like Senator Tobito Salonga. Maraming salamat.